In this video, let's clean up the body, the head, the nose and the horns. So we already remeshed the body. Let's go to sculpt mode and let's do a quick mesh filter on here with the smooth filter type. Left click and hold, move this a bit to the side to smooth out everything a tiny bit. So as mentioned multiple times, we will keep the shapes of this relatively smooth. However, I want to add a little bit more definition to the shape of the body. So I want to add these tiny breasts kind of thing here. However, still pretty smooth. Then let's use a draw sharp brush, add a little line here, and maybe let's make the belly a bit bigger. Smoothes, of course. And with a draw sharp brush, let's add like a tiny belly button thing, maybe a bit more to the top here, something like this. With G, we can adjust everything a bit more. Then I would probably make the line here on the chin, under the chin, a bit sharper. Not too sharp. And what I also realized is when we have a look on a skull of a human, then we basically have the jawbone over here and then the skull over here. And I thought we can do something similar here by adjusting the shape here a bit so that we can better read the shape of the skull underneath the surface. Same over here, let's add a line, and of course we smooth this out quite a bit so it's not too obvious. Let's use the clay strips brush, remove some of the geometry over here, which is a bit too much, and maybe add a bit back over here. So the clay strips brush is really good if you carefully want to add or remove geometry. Then same here, let's add a little bit more geometry to the shoulder part. And I really orient myself here on the anatomy of humans. Just a tiny bit, because like a creature like this does not exist in reality. However, to make it more realistic, or that this could be something from reality, more or less, then we should add some features which we also can find in the reality. So if we have a look from the back here, we can see that the connection from the tail to the body is relatively sharp, let's say, and here it's relatively smooth. However, I think for the shape which I choose here for the creature, which is a bit different than we have here in the concept art, it still looks nice. So what I do here, I basically just add a little bit of geometry in the center so we can see the spine here a bit, but again, smoothed out quite a bit. And again here, let's smooth out the tail a bit. If you feel that this is too thin, use the inflate deflate brush and make this thicker again. Then down here, let's add a bit of geometry, smoothes, same over here. And maybe add a bit of a line here for where we connect the legs with the body later on. So as you can see, I'm just looking at the body, look at my references and adjust everything a bit until I feel that it looks right. Now let's continue with the face here. I don't want to overdo it here. The most important part for me is the mouth, that we make this ready for retopology. As mentioned, the mouth should be closed compared to the reference here. So first of all, let's smooth this out once again a bit more. And this little creature has very flat lips, so we don't have these fat lips here. So let's add a bit of geometry and make it look relatively flat. And I would even use the draw sharp brush here and hold down Control to invert this to add a bit of a sharper line here. Same up here, smooth this out a tiny bit. So as you can see here, we have the lower lip, which is a bit further into the body than the upper lip here. And then we can use either the draw sharp brush or maybe even the crease brush and add a sharper line in here. The crease brush usually works pretty well for this because this is pinching the geometry together. And here on the mouse corner, I usually use a big crease brush and draw in here a bit. So we have this nice shape from the mouse corner. Then you can see up here, the distance from the nose to the upper lip here is pretty short. So let's use a big grab brush and move it a bit up here. And I think maybe we can even pull this a bit out. Something like this. The eyes we will adjust later because we will close them anyway, so it doesn't make sense to add much details here yet. Maybe let's add a little bit of a hole over here, not too much. Something like this, and maybe some geometry here around the horn, but this we will also connect better when we merge the horn with the head. Yeah, this does look nice already. Let's switch over to the nose here, and with a draw sharp brush, basically just have this shape over here. So I just draw in here to kind of get the shape. With a sculpt draw brush, maybe add a bit more geometry on the side here, not too much though. And as you can see, the shape of the nose is pretty simple, so nothing too fancy here. Maybe put it down a bit. Here we can even test this by switching to the other keyframe. And have a look over here. I think this fits pretty well. Yeah, that looks good. And the last thing I'm doing here now is the horns. Let's switch over to the horns. And we kind of messed this up a bit in the early sculpting stage. However, let's clean this up. First of all, let's add a bit more geometry here. Here I'm starting with a clay strips brush, so I am just carefully adding geometry, especially here where I added these dents a bit. So let's add some geometry over here. Very carefully. And for all these parts, by the way, we don't use the symmetry feature here because we are using the mirror modifier, so we don't need this at this stage. And when we have a look at the horns here, all these details I won't add now, except this flat shape down here. We can also see it here from the back a bit. Here we have this horn and then this skin-like shape down here. So this is what we want to add now. Let's try something out here. First of all, let's smooth this out a bit more down here. Make sure that the general shape of the horn is nice. Now let's use the mask brush, press M, make it very small and set the strength to 1. And now for the stroke, let's enable stabilize stroke, which allows us to draw along here and then a smooth line will pull the brush behind our mouse cursor. In this way we can create much smoother lines here. Maybe let's disable strength, pressure sensitivity and enable this for the radius. So we can also change the radius by pressing a bit harder the closer we get to the head. Maybe let's go down here once again, make it a bit thicker, closer to the head. Something like this. I think this looks good. Now let's press Ctrl I to invert this. And now we could use the move tool, go to sculpt, set pivot and click on mask border. For whatever reason, the pivot is not working anyway. So let's go with the move tool here and just pull it down a bit. Something like this. And then we have to fix this manually. Let's go with the trim tool, the lasso trim, and just carefully, more like this. Yeah, I think something like this should do. Let's press W and click on facet from visible. So we basically remove all the facets. Then I leave the mask enabled still, so I can carefully go along here with the smooth brush, smooth this out. And maybe before we do this, let's undo. Let's run another remesh. Press Ctrl R to remesh this and then we lose the mask here. However, let's undo. I can simply click on Paint Mask under the Preserve option, click on Remesh and then this will preserve the mask. Now let's smooth this out a bit, very carefully. And then let's press Alt M to remove the mask and maybe let's add some geometry up here carefully. We will definitely work on this later on when we're working on the details. Maybe let's move this up here a bit. I feel that the horn feels too thick. Let's smooth this out here. Let's cut away this weird little thing here. Again with the trim tool. Let's cut this away. Yeah. Press W, facet from visible, and then we can smooth this here a bit. Let's remesh this once again. Yeah, then this disappears and this looks good. Yeah, one thing that's really not easy to do is to create a nice flat surface here, but I think this already looks quite good. What we still can do, let's use the crease brush with the stabilize stroke and go along here a tiny bit to create a nicer line here. Same on the other side. Yeah, I think this should do the job. It's of course still not perfect. But yeah, the final cleanup we will do later. And yeah, that should it be for this video. We now cleaned up all the parts, meaning in the next video we can merge everything. And as always, don't forget to save.